Welcome to the PHP Essential Training Series. I am Mike King, your host, and in this tutorial we're going to be looking at operators in PHP Part 3. So we're actually going to wrap up our discussion on operators in PHP, and we're going to be looking at the logical operators. We're going to actually start our discussion with the logical operators in PHP. Logical operators in PHP are typically used to combine conditional statements inside your PHP code. Logical operators are used to test more than one condition at a time. Logical operators are often used to test whether a username and a password are correct. So a lot of times you'll see logical operators used inside conditional statements in PHP to test for login criteria for logging into a system. And here's what the logical operators that we're going to look at over the next few minutes are in PHP. We have the AND operator, which is true if both the variables x and y are true. We'd get a true return. We have the OR operator, which is true if either of the x or y variables is true. We have the XOR operator, which is true if either x or y is true, but not both. If both of them are true, it would be false. If one of the two of them are true, it would be true. Then we have the ampersand AND operator, and it's basically the same thing. It just uses the ampersand sign. We have the OR operator, again, the two straight up bars. They're right above the / key on your keyboard, which normally is right above the enter key on a PC keyboard. And then we have the NOT operator, which is true is not true. In other words, we're asking if something is not true or not false with that NOT operator. And again, if these are a little bit confusing, don't worry, because we're going to demonstrate all those as we get into the lab. So let's move into our development environment and demonstrate what we just talked about in the presentation. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and drop out of my presentation and get into the development environment. First thing I want to do, let's confirm that we have the Apache server up and running. Again, we'll be running with PHP code, so we have to have the server up and running to translate the code for us. Then I'm going to bring up Sublime Text 3, which is the text editor I'll be using for this demonstration, and Google Chrome will be my browser that I'll be using. I'm actually logged in my local host under my operators folder inside my PHP testing environment. All right, first thing I want to do, I've got my template loaded. Let's do a save as. I want to go and save this as operator_3 because this is part 3 of this tutorial series on operators in PHP. I'm going to go ahead and change my title to operators in PHP. And then I'm going to go ahead and put an H3 for my div inside my container. And this is going to be our logical operators. And let's close out that H3 tag. Let's go ahead and save those changes. Let's go back and load up that _3 file. And we can see now that we've got our title up, we are good to go. So let's go ahead and do some demonstrations on the logical operators in PHP. First thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and open up my PHP tags so we can actually get some PHP code in here. Let's go ahead and get that closing tag in there. Again, inside my container, first thing I want to do, let's go ahead and set up a variable. I'm going to set up a variable year based on my demonstration, and I'm going to put the year as not, or let's make it 2015. So year equal 2015. We're going to make it last year for this particular demonstration. And because of that, what I want to do for the demonstration is I'm going to put a note in here. Leap years are divisible by 400. Or by 4, but not by 100. And if you think about that statement, that gives us a lot of things we can do with an if statement for a conditional inside of our programming code. So let's write an if statement. Let's say if, and I'm going to have my opening and closing parentheses, and my first comparison, I'm going to open another set of parentheses and say if year, so I'm using that variable year that we just created, if the modulo of 400, so I'm looking at, and we've talked about these modulos over the last couple exercises, so I'm saying if I take the year and divide it by 400 and my remainder is equal to 0, so look at all the comparison operators we used just inside this one statement. We've already used two different operators that we've been talking about over the last few tutorials. So I've got the modulo of 400, and if it's equal to 0, and then I'm going to say or, and inside another set of parentheses, I'm going to say year, again, going back to that variable, the modulo by 100, so now I'm looking at year divided by 100, is not equal to 0. Close that parenthesis, and I'm going to say and. So now I want my double and signs, and again with year modulo of 4 is equal to 0. And then I should have 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go ahead and extend this a little bit. I should have 3 parentheses closing everything out. Then I'm going to have my opening and closing curly braces. And then I'm going to say echo, because I want to echo this back to our screen. The variable name, so whatever that variable is in year, is a leap year. I'm going to end that, and close that with a semicolon. And then I'm going to come down to this curly brace and say else. Open and close my curly braces. I'm going to have another echo statement. Bring the variable back. So I'm going to go year is not a leap year. And that with a semicolon. Now let's save this and let's talk about what we've just done here, because we've actually done a lot of things with these comparison operators, with our operators. First thing I did is I assigned a value to the variable year, and I said it's 2015. And I know that 2015 is not a leap year. I know that, and that's one of the reasons why I grabbed that year. But I'm saying right here, if, and because we're in a conditional statement, we always open that up inside parentheses. So our first and last parentheses right there is because of the if conditional statement itself. And then my first condition is if year modulo 400 is equal to 0. In other words, if I subtract year by 400 and there is nothing left over, or if I subtract year by 100 and it's not equal to 0, and year divided by 4 is equal to 0, then year is a leap year. If not, year is not a leap year. So let's go ahead and save this change. And I know based on 2015 that 2015 is not a leap year, so I should fall into the else statement based on those conditions, and it should say is not a leap year. 2015 is not a leap year. But if I were to change this to 2016, because 2016 is a leap year, it's going to meet these conditions. Refresh it, 2016 is a leap year. So we've taken a lot of the comparison operators and a lot of the logical operators that we've talked about over the last few exercises and put them into one statement where you can see how they work. I'm using modulo, I'm using the or, and I'm using the and. And actually, I'm actually even using the not, because I've got not equal right there. So I've got equal. By the way, these could be identical too. I could actually make this identical with the triple equal signs, because they will be identical. Not only will they be 0, but they'll be the same data type. And actually, I could make this one not identical. It's going to have the exact same response. 2016 is a leap year. If I make this back to 2015, save that, refresh my browser window, 2015 is not a leap year. So if 2016 is 2012, think about it. I'm going to refresh it. I'm telling you right now, yes it is, and 2012 is a leap year. So would 2020 be. 2020 would be a leap year also. Save the change, refresh the browser window, because every 4 years we have a leap year, but 2019 is not. So we've written this nice little operational conditional statement that will tell you whether or not a leap year is a leap year. Was 1956 a leap year? Save the change, refresh my browser window. 1956 was a leap year. So you can see how this works. Again, we've used the modulos, conditional statements, we've used the and, the or, and the not. So I hope that helps you understand a little bit better as to what's going on with these logical operators. The next thing we're going to look at is the string operators inside of PHP. All right, so let's go look at another group of operators inside PHP, and these are string operators. I'm actually going to go back into my presentation, and I'm going to go back and look at string operators in PHP. PHP has two operators which are specifically designed for strings, and they are the concatenation operator, which is strictly a period, looks like a dot, and it concatenates string 1 to string 2, and you'll see it in the demonstration what I mean by concatenation. It actually joins them together. And then we have the dot equal, which is a concatenation assignment, and what it does in this particular example, it appends string 2 to string 1. And again, you'll see it as we walk through the demonstrations. We use these a lot as we join groups of text and groups of variables and groups of functions together inside of PHP. We use the concatenation operator quite a bit. So let's drop into our development environment and we'll demonstrate what we just talked about. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and minimize our presentation. Let's get into our development environment. I'm going to put a couple of line breaks here. Actually, let me just copy this H3. Come down below our PHP tags. Let me put that in, and I'm just going to call these string operators. Inside of PHP, let me go grab that operator and pull that out. Let's go ahead and save these changes. Now what I want to do is I want to create a couple of variables, but these are going to be string variables. So let me give my PHP tags. Let me open up my PHP tags. Come down a few lines and close that PHP tag. And inside those tags, let's open up a couple of variables. So I'm going to have a variable called text1. And let's have that equal to, this is a string test. And when I say string test, I mean a string of text. And that with a semicolon. Let's come down and create another variable called text2. And we'll say, hello all. This is the second string. And that with a period, and that with a semicolon. Now, if I wanted to concatenate these two strings together inside of PHP, there's a couple different ways I could do it. But the easiest way is to just do this. Echo text1, put a space, a dot. That's my concatenation sign. Remember, we just talked about that. And then I'm going to say text2. So it's going to print this as one long string of text. If I save those changes, refresh my browser window, you'll see this is a string test. Hello all, this is the second string. And if I actually wanted to put a space, you notice right now there is no space between those two strings. They just kind of run together. What I would have to do is I have to put my concatenation sign, then a quotation mark with a space in between, and another concatenation sign. So what I'm doing is I'm joining my first text to a space, and then joining that space to my second text. So if I were to save that change, refresh the browser window, now we get that space in there. And by the way, since HTML ignores white space, if I were to put a bunch of spaces in there, save the change, refresh my browser window, I'm still only going to see one. So if I really wanted a group of spacing in there, I'd have to put in the non-blanking space as we use for HTML entities. But anyway, you get the drift. That's how concatenation works, joining strings together. If I wanted to append a string, because we actually do this quite a bit when I'm building dynamic pages in HTML, I actually do append strings. And the way that you append strings, let's do this. Let's say, let's create another string, text3, that equals, let's just call this hello. Save that. Let's go text4. Let's save this. Hello there, comma, how are, put my space and save that one, and then I'm going to come down and say text5. And that's going to be equal to you with a question mark. So if I wanted these to appear together, I could actually append them into my variable. So let's say I created a variable and I want to append those. So I'm going to create a variable called sen. And sen is going to be equal to text3 dot equal text4 dot equal text 5. So what I'm doing is I'm putting all these together into one single string, and if I echo send, actually let's put a couple of line breaks in here. Just to make it easier to read what we're doing. Save that, save my changes, refresh my browser window. Syntax here on line 40. Forgot my semicolon right there. Save the change, refresh the browser window. And now we see this is a string test. Hello all, this is a second string. And this is hello there, how are you? This is where we actually brought all those by dot equal. We brought all those together, assigned them to a new variable. Hello there, how are you? And it came together as one string of text. And actually I probably should have put a space in there because it's showing up all grouped. But you get the gist on how these string concatenations and how the append strings work. And that pretty much wraps it up. We have some PHP array operators that we could actually cover, but we've covered them all already. And it's basically the equal, the not equal, the greater than, the less than. I was thinking of actually having a second grouping on how we compare arrays, but it's actually done the same way that we had done in the first group of operators. So I don't really see a need to do that. And as we run across them writing our little projects, I'll actually point out how things are working with arrays using that var dump function and using our comparison operators. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorials on operators. They are important in programming and understanding how to program and how we use them. And I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial.